Hello, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while and I do apologize for that, but I'm gonna jump right into today's video. Today we will be covering Roylynn Rides Horse murder. However, before we start this, I want to share some information with you. Personally, I feel like missing and murdered Indigenous people, especially women and children, are not spoken about enough. Did you know that between 2011 and September 2020, 710 Indigenous people were reported missing across the state of Wyoming? And between 2000 and 2020, Indigenous homicide victims accounted for 21% of all homicides, even though they just make up 3% of the state's population. White homicide victims were more likely than Indigenous people to receive media coverage, and when Indigenous cases did receive media attention, articles were more likely to include violent language or portray them in a negative light, compared with stories about white victims. In California, the murders of Indigenous women are 7 times less likely to be solved than any other nationality or ethnicity. Reportedly, only 9% of the murders of Indigenous women in California are solved, compared to 60% among the non-Indigenous population. You might not think this is a big deal. However, the U.S. Indigenous population only makes up 0.8% to 1.8% of the population. This epidemic isn't just happening in America, it's happening all over the world. But I'll make sure to touch on this in future videos. On April 17th, 2016, 28-year-old Roylynn Rides Horse was at a bar with her boyfriend when they got into an argument. Angelica Joe Whiteman, DiMarzio Suede Sanchez, and his brother Frank James Sanchez were also at the saloon in Kirby, Montana. The three of them offered to give Rides Horse a lift home to the Crow Reservation. Unfortunately, accepting this lift ultimately costed Rides Horse her life. Rides Horse and Whiteman were members of the Crow tribe. DiMarzio Sanchez was a member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe. During the ride, an argument developed between Rides Horse and Whiteman, which quickly escalated to the rest of the group and became violent. According to a witness, Whiteman and Rides Horse had started arguing over a man, and Whiteman, sitting in the front seat, started punching Rides Horse. She told DiMarzio Sanchez to stop the car, and the group began savagely beating Rides Horse. At one point, Sanchez allegedly offered to teach Whiteman how to strangle a person properly, and in the process strangled Rides Horse with a bandana. Frank Sanchez then retrieved a can of gasoline from the trunk, and Rides Horse was stripped naked and doused in gasoline. Then DiMarzio Sanchez set fire to Rides Horse. The three killers left the scene, leaving Rides Horse for dead in a field. Roylynn Rides Horse's naked and burnt body was first discovered by a rancher on April 17, 2016. She had lay there for 14 excruciating hours before she was found. She was badly beaten, frostbitten, and severely burned. 45% of her body was covered in third-degree burns. Rides Horse was subjected to emergency treatment at the Crow Agency Hospital and then was immediately transferred to the University of Utah Hospital Burn Center. Doctors informed the Rides Horse family that before collapsing on the ground, she had walked for 3 miles after being set on fire. However, tragically, Roylynn Rides Horse succumbed to her injuries and died on June 28, 2016. She left behind 6 children. This horrible murder drew attention to the difficulties of policing on the reservation and how more needs to be done about the policing of these large rural areas and the severe underfunding. Following Roylynn Rides Horse's tragic and brutal murder, Montana politicians introduced legislation to designate May 5, 2017 as a National Day of Awareness for missing and murdered Native women and girls. They hope that this day will draw attention to the fact American Indian women are killed at a rate of more than 10 times the national average. In 2018, all 3 killers were brought to justice. DeMarzio Sanchez was convicted of first-degree murder and was given a mandatory life sentence. Whiteman pleaded guilty to aiding and abetting first-degree murder and was sentenced to 40 years. Frank Sanchez's actions were lesser than the other 2. However, he still failed to inform the authorities that he was present during a murder. He also could have informed the police that a murder had just taken place, but he never. And he subsequently lied to the police about his whereabouts and the whereabouts of his 2 co-defendants. He eventually pleaded guilty to being an accessory and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. He also received 3 years of supervised release and was ordered to pay a restitution of over $14,000. I'm going to be covering more cases about missing and murdered Indigenous people. Please let me know if you have any specific cases that you would like me to cover. I did this video to raise awareness of the missing and murdered Indigenous people. My heart goes out to Roylynn's family and each family that has a missing or murdered loved one.